Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Game Haus. Now, if you've stayed tuned in to what I've been doing, you will know that a couple weeks ago I did an excellent interview with a wonderful young lady, and Cuddle Core was it was an excellent interview. It was a great conversation, and the resulting feedback from that interview. And this is just one of the awesome things about gaming. I got a reaction from her mom about the interview. And I'm like, you know what would make a great story? Talking to her mother, because I'm sure there are parents out there who have kids who want to do this esports thing that, have a little bit of skill, a little bit of talent, drive, and they're like, what the heck do I do? I don't even know what esports is. I just see my kids staring at a screen 9 hours a day. What do I do? So I'm fortunate enough to have with me it's hard to put into words, but a wonderful woman to have a conversation with about what it's like to be a parent of a professional gamer. How does that evolve over time? So I have with me Miss Carter, and she's going to introduce herself, and we're going to talk a little bit about what it's like to be a parent and raise kids and support them and work through all the uncertainty and fear. I'm honored that I'm very honored to have you with me today, Miss Carter. Go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Well, good morning, Bill and everyone. It's my honor to be here, Bill. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Vikki Carter, and I'm mother to Janelle Cuddle Core Carter, who's a professional esports player. And again, my pleasure to be here.
Thanks very much for making time for me. Okay, so as a parent now, the way gaming has evolved just in the past couple of years has been amazing. But the thing is, your daughter's been doing this for 6 years. And for a professional gamer, 6 years is a long time. So she's been working her way up and refining her skills and going to events for a while. So as a parent of a kid who you want them to have a career and a life and be successful and be happy, and you also want them to be able to eat food that's not yours.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
You want them
That is the
to,
goal.
right? So what's that like? So I guess sort of take me back to the start of this when you're like, this is what she wants to do. Okay, she looks like she's good at it. I don't know what's going. So what is that conversation like?
Okay, it started as recreationally for her, and then her consistency, her passion about it led us to believe that in the beginning that, wow, this is something she's very interested in, but not necessarily as a career in the very beginning, because she wasn't just doing gaming, but she was involved in other extracurricular activities, both academic and sports related, in elementary school, in high school, excelling at all of them. And so with gaming, just in the latter years of high school, going into college, it became very apparent from what she told us, because she was always very honest about communicating her love of it. And then as she started to delve even deeper into it, finding a sponsor within the skies and heavenly, the her first sponsor, and moving forward from there. But then wrapping up college, so she wasn't as involved, but started going to tournaments, going to different places within the state where we live to meet up with other people who shared her love of it. That was an indicator. But it was quite refreshing, was one of the words I wanted to use in watching her and her passion for it, and her coming into her understanding of the different facets of gaming. And as she learned more and delved deeper to learn more, we had a pretty good idea that she had planned on making this a major part of her life. So we just kind of held on,
Mm-hmm.
and waited for her to kind of come to us and let us know what her plans were, because she didn't really start, and she came to us and said this to us, that I'm going to finishing college. I'll be graduating within the next 6 months. But after I graduate college, this is what I do with my art, because she's also a degreed artist
Mm-hmm.
and professional artist. So this is what I'm doing with my art. However, I'm going to start touring more. Once I graduate college, I'm going to start looking for a new sponsor.
Mm-hmm.
And, so just within the last year, she's really been able to, while it's been 6 years since she got started, it's only been this past year that she's been able to inundate herself in the world of gaming, and fierce, intense competition on a regular basis with her new sponsor, Equinox.
Right.
So we, in all things with our children, we support her, because we know how passionate she is about it, how determined she is about it, and in her knowing that the passion that she gives to it and that she puts into it, she's plotting the course to ensure that it gives back to her what she's given to it, as far as it supporting her.
So, I'm sure that the conversations that you have, I'm sure along the way there were struggles and setbacks, and the conversations that you have with your husband and the conversations that you have with your other family members, and they kind of look at you sideways when you say that, my daughter's a professional gamer, and they're like, is that even a job? What so for people that don't have your understanding of where she's come from and what she's doing now, when people talk to you and ask you what does she do and how does she do, what do you say to them?
I just explained to them what she's doing the same way she explains to me.
Mm-hmm.
And gave me an understanding where I could feel more comfortable, in that it would provide her with the security as her parents that we want her to have. Because we didn't have that understanding in the beginning. My husband had an idea that with some of the other fighting games, there are people out there making millions,
Mm-hmm.
who are on the covers of magazines, that are more than comfortable in the career paths that they've made in the FGC. However, in esports with Janelle and Tekken, there's just so much that we didn't know, that for me to have a better understanding, to be able to support her fully, and to feel that it would give her what we want for her, because at this point as an adult, these are her choices
Mm-hmm.
to make, and we have no say.
Mm-hmm.
But we continue to be part of her life and her support network. So I felt it was our responsibility to get educated so that we could be fully supportive of her efforts. So when people ask me, I tell them what I know.
Mm-hmm.
This is her team. These are her sponsors. These are the events she goes to. This is where she placed. This is why that placement is good. This is what she's doing with it. This is what she hopes to do with it. And it's just like with her art, because the arts, period, whether it's gaming or being an illustrator, an artist, you get that. What can they possibly do with that?
Right.
How can they make a living?
Right.
And I learned the many different ways that they can,
Mm-hmm.
what they're doing in order to find the resources that they need, to contact the people and the organizations that they need to contact in
Mm-hmm.
order to make their stance firm in that field. And then we just go from there. But I show them the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to them of what I know.
Mm-hmm.
And, if they understand it, they understand it. If they don't, as long as she does,
Right.
and she's comfortable in that, at the end of the day, it's really all that matters.
Wow. Okay, so I'm sure that there were, along the way, as kids are growing up and they have their teenage moments and they make their bad decisions, and they that's just part of being a teenager and being in high school and learning how to become a functioning adult. It sounds very much like to me that you and it sounds to me like when it comes to Janelle, that, you know, when she's working on this and focused on this and going these places, that you and your husband, while you were supportive, you set down some very specific guidelines. Okay, look, if you're going to do this, here's what this is going to look like. You need to have this, and you need to be able to support yourself. You need to be able to have an education that will that will serve you, and that serves everything that you're going to do. So for you, obviously, education is important. You went to college. You graduated college. So what did you say to Janelle to help her understand that, yeah, you can do this, but you also need to have an education?
Well, she had pretty much heard that her entire life, so it wasn't a new dialogue
Okay.
between us. But in regards to her and gaming and her art, the conversation was that, you know, the passion that you have for this, because the only thing the only thing we've ever heard her say her entire life was that she wanted to be an artist. She never wanted to be a nurse or a fireman or a police officer or the president of the United States. She wanted to be an artist. She was always passionate about that. We always made sure she had access to the resources she needed to pursue that in excellence. So when she started mentioning, you know, started gaming
Right.
and talking about making it her career, we knew that it was a serious endeavor and that this wasn't something that she took lightly. So we were like, okay, this is what you want to do. But with the passion that you put into this, the love and the passion you put into this, you want to make sure that that, as well as your art, that it's giving back to you the same love and passion that you put into it, that it supports you the way that you're supporting it. So you need to make sure that you're seeking out the people, the organizations, and the revenue streams that come with this area so that you're taken care of for the rest of your life. And if this is truly going to be your next chapter, you need to research and plot out everything that you want from it, because we always have told them, seek out, you know what your plan is, now write it out. What are the steps you need to take in order to get there? Again, they've heard it their entire lives. It's not enough to want it, but what do you have to do in order to make sure it happens? What access do you need? Where do you need to go? Who do you need to be around? And you need to place yourself there. But how do you get there? Write it out, and we will get there together until you no longer need us. And so she took that very same approach. She's taking that very same approach to gaming, because she's in the process of that now, but she's approaching it like she has any other endeavor in her life, based on what her father and I have told she and her siblings always.
Wow. I could really hear could really hear in your voice right there that you and your husband have instilled in your kids the understanding of, yeah, if you want something, great, but now you need to take your desires and put them into action. Make the decision to act upon what you want to do. Have a plan, think it through. Let's talk about this. Let's work on this together. So wow, I'm really overwhelmed by this. When you're with other parents and they're like, you know, my kid loves this, and my kid, he looks like he's good, but I don't know if this actually works, or what can this turn into. I'm sure that you've been around other parents with
Yes.
with kids who love gaming and esports. What do you tell them to work on with their kids? What do you tell them to try to avoid? What advice do you give them?
You know, I can only tell them what my concerns were as a parent,
Right.
and then kind of where it led us. And I know toxic environments, toxic chats. Um,
Right.
that was our biggest concern. It was my major concern for Janelle when she initially started gaming. As
Right.
she got older, toxic environments, people, comments, um, and it was important to us that she had a safe environment and to game in,
Right.
you know, and that I remember us telling her things like, "Don't give out personal information.
Right.
They don't need to know your name. They don't need to know where you live. They
Right.
don't need to know you're a female if you can get away with that.
Okay.
You know, you're just somebody that they're competing with."
Right.
Um, you know, and making sure that the environment, and then later she started going to venues in order to meet up with other people who were doing what she enjoyed. Well, lot primarily uh, male were in these environments,
Right.
and she'd come home and she's Janelle again is very outspoken.
Yeah.
However she's feeling, whatever she's going through, you're gonna know it,
Hmm.
and she'd come home and tell us about the environment, about the people she'd meet, people who are still friends of hers to this day,
Hmm.
um, and the joy she would get, the thrill, the adrenaline rush that she would get. And
Right.
this became a kind of regular thing. At the time, we would take her to the events, especially my husband.
Hmm.
He'd take her to the venue, he'd drop her off, he'd pick her up. Well, my husband and I, we've been married almost 30 years, and
Hmm.
we have date nights,
Hmm.
because our schedules get pretty busy, not just as parents, but in our own individual lives. We get busy, but we make sure that we find time for each other. So we would start going on date nights to the different venues that she would go to recreationally to game.
Hmm.
So we would go, we would bowl, we would have drinks, we'd, kind of take a peek and listen,
Right.
while not overcrowding her space. We'd invite the young men and owners to the establishments into our home. One Christmas Eve, we invite people over. That's our big celebration. And one year we invited the owner of a place in Aurora and his wife and children into our home,
Hmm.
along with her gaming friends who had been into our homes to practice many times. Invited them over, and some of them even brought their parents. We had the best time, but that was in order not to have her feel like we thought she was irresponsible or fragile or anything like that, which we didn't think that,
Right.
but just wanted to feel more in tune to where she was spending her time
Hmm.
in order that we could just feel that she was safe, you know.
Yeah.
And in that way we learned a great deal. And that's what I would say to parents too, and I have, you know, communicate with them in the way that they communicate best. Whatever they're involved in,
Hmm.
you may not, I'm not in esports. I don't play video games. I don't
Right.
do those things.
Right.
But I'm learning, and I'm learning more and more every day in order to have an open, honest communication and dialogue with my daughter. I have another daughter who French. She's in grad school now, studying French, and getting ready to leave for Europe for a year teaching at a university in France. I no longer speak French. Art and French were my majors, but I know enough words. I know enough about what she's doing in order to have a dialogue, so that when she's telling me these wonderful things that are happening to her, I can honestly answer her.
Hmm.
Just like Janelle with her gaming, when she comes home from each tournaments, when she calls me from the tournaments and she says, "Mom, this happened, that happened," and I can say even before she gets started, "Oh, GG's, you know, with that player,
Right.
great side steps,
Hmm.
good shoe shines in this match,
Hmm.
um, such and such was on fire today. What fierce competition."
Right.
She respects that. She appreciates that. She loves that because it shows that I'm not just taking an interest in her and what she's doing,
Right.
but in gaming in and of itself, so that I can have a good dialogue with her without feeling like I'm just going through the robotic motions of shaking my head and going, uh-huh, so
Yes, I know
in
exactly what you mean.
yeah, so in order to for and when I'm talking to other parents and as they
Hmm.
ask me questions, they're interested in it, you get interested in it.
Right.
You find out, I've done some research
Hmm.
in how much can she do with this? How far can she go with this? While she's very much into esports, what will her next chapter be? Because it won't always be competitive gaming.
Right.
So, what are some of the options she has in coming out of the fighting aspect and going into her next chapter in gaming, in her art? So,
Hmm.
in talking to parents, keep an eye on them very early on. Learn everything you can about the communities that they're involved
Right.
in order for you to help keep them safe in the beginning when they're not thinking about those kind of aspects, and how best to do that. Um, as they get older and safety is, primary for the things that they think about as well, what other ways can you connect with them on what they're doing so that you can support them without smothering them,
Right. And,
you
and
know?
right. And I like what you said just very early on in the conversation, that you invited people over. You invited the parents. You invited the other players. You invited the young men into your home. Yes. And you're like, let's get to know everybody so that we're all on the same page and we all have a connection. Because when you talk
Yeah,
about toxicity, I think the way you fix toxicity is through connection. And because if I know the person that I'm playing, or I know more of her than I would know from the random person that I run into online, I'm going to be more likely to respect that person. And I like the fact that you face the toxicity with love. I that is some really deep thinking there. It's like the next level thought process, because we always have this reaction to toxicity of returning it back, and it just feeds on itself after a while.
yeah,
And you've taken the step of, well, let us create our own community. Let's create, I know this player's mom, and if I find out that this player is being a little off the rails, I might call their mother. Hey,
right, right.
is she feeling okay today? Because I saw this happen, and maybe he's just having a hard time, and maybe he just took it out on the wrong person. That happens to everybody, and I really wish that gaming had more parents like you guys. I really do.
Well,
It,
thank you.
it would solve so many more problems, and people just understanding that this is the way young people hang out. This is the way young
Right,
people interact. This is the way young people talk. It's no
right.
different than any other generation. It's no
I was
different. Yeah, it's no different. I mean,
I,
and the
I was
focus.
just gonna say
Yeah.
that because because it's because when you ask me about being the parent of an esports competitor,
Hmm.
it's not unlike being the parent of a for me being the parent of a child and adult in any other area, because as a child, you can find toxic environments and are concerned over them being safe,
Hmm.
period.
Hmm.
in in friendships, because all friendships don't make the cut. You may start out good friends with somebody today, but you lose people along the way, especially when you choose to take the high road, which is a lot of time a road less traveled with kids because they're trying to fit in.
Right.
And sometimes in kids trying to fit in, they lose themselves. They lose their identity, and that can happen whether it's esports or basketball or tennis or soccer or track. You can come across toxicity for kids in almost any environment, and parents have to be attentive and pay attention and listen to your children, listen to what they're saying and what they're not saying,
Right.
in order to, many times, my husband had a 50th birthday party, and Janelle is a very eloquent speaker.
Mm-hmm.
And she wrote a speech, and she read it to her dad at his 50th birthday. And she said to him, "Thank you for allowing me always to be myself. But most of all, Dad, I want to thank you for saving my life."
Wow.
And he cried. And her sisters were in the background going, "Oh my God, how are we going to follow up with this?" You know, but, but I knew immediately what she meant. You know, always being open and available to your children for them to come to you. And we have always told them, now when you initially come to us with some things, we may not initially react the way you want us to, but at the end of the day, no one has your back and your ear more than we do. And you can say that to your kids, but we have 3 daughters, and they are stubborn and obstinate. Young women, they have always held us accountable
Right.
to
Well,
what we've raised them with.
right.
You know, and it makes us better. It makes us better.
Well, yeah, and they're stubborn and obstinate, but they obviously don't get it from you, right? They must get it from somebody else, right?
It must have been the grandparents, because it couldn't have possibly have been us. You know, but just it's not so for gaming, I just took what I knew as far as my protective measures with my Janelle, and I just transferred them to another environment that she had chosen to give her attention to. So it wasn't foreign to me. The action itself wasn't foreign to me. The field may have been,
Mm-hmm.
but the protectiveness and the measures by which I take that were not.
Wow. Wow. I can't say this enough. We need more parents like you in esports. We really do. We need more parents who just, we might not completely understand, but you know that your kids are they're really wound up about it, and they're passionate, and then you use what you know as a parent, and you guide them in the right direction, and you
And then you let them take the ball.
Yes.
Because we raised them to be adults.
Yes.
We raised them to be adults. And I've said on more than one occasion with all 3, because they're all professionals now, and it can be hard as parents to give them the freedom to soar, even though you've raised them to do that. Mm-hmm. Because the world in which we live in today is frightening.
Yes.
But at some point you have to step back and trust that you've given them everything that they need and that they've got it from here, because if you don't, you risk losing them because they feel you don't trust them and their capability.
Yeah. Wow.
Wow,
that wow. Oh boy, this is a fantastic conversation. Thank you very much for talking to me today. I know that we kind of went back and forth a little bit trying to work this out, but thank you very much for making time for me. I am very honored that you took some time to help me understand what you've gone through with her. I think this is an excellent example of what kids are doing today, the gaming, how you can utilize that for their benefit. Yes, the world is dangerous. The world can be toxic. That hasn't changed in 2,000 years. It hasn't. The world is still a dangerous place, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
It hasn't. And so I guess the life values, the core values, mm-hmm. that you raise your children with, you pray that they transfer over into whatever it is that they decide to do. And I see that every day in Janelle, mm-hmm. and what she does. And now, we're just along for the ride, and we hope that she continues to include us, mm-hmm. because I think she's very much aware that what we enjoy most now is watching her in her journey. She doesn't need us anymore.
Right.
She doesn't need that hand behind her guiding her.
Right.
Because it's instilled within her. But it's just watching the journey that brings us so much joy. And the stance that she takes, because she's also a spokesperson, mm-hmm. and a representative for all of those,
right.
of both genders. And she's a young woman of color, that's very important to her in the in what she's doing in every respect, you know. So it's a great sense of pride that we watch her on her journey now, and that every now and again we get included, such as in this interview, which I've never done before. But I speak truly, basically, from what I know, and they continue, Janelle and her sisters, to enable us to grow beyond just what we know, but into their worlds, you know, and what they do and how they do it, and just couldn't be prouder.
Wow.
Couldn't be.
Wow. Well, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for making some time for me today, Miss Carter. And I am honored to have you with me today. And like I said, I keep repeating this. We need more parents like you. We need to get this story out, and so that parents know that esports is not this horrible monster that some people make it out to be. It's just the next thing that kids are doing, and it's a great thing. Thank you very much for making time for me today. Making time for me today. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you for having me, Bill. It's been my pleasure.
Awesome. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you like this content and the other stuff that we have on the Game Haus YouTube channel, please share this video, like this video, and the other stuff we have, and I'll see you soon.